You are watching a Naber Kids video.
My name is Harald Naber. I was born November 30th, 1937 in Reit, Germany.
My name is Hang on Silicon. I live in Mendenhall Glacier in Alaska. I go to Mendenhall Silicon School. I learn to speak English in that school. Older Silicans don't speak or understand the English language. So I must translate every word. Even Silicon King Grin cannot read, write, or speak the English language. He also needs me to translate.
4th Avenue in Anchorage, Alaska looked like this in 1952, while 14-year-old Harald was enjoying his dog named Rollo in Reit. During the early 60s, Harald Naber moved to Villa Rothenburg, now seen behind me. His father Gert Naber, who was killed during World War II in Serbia, had purchased this property in 1939. To continue the brief history of the Naber Kids' evolution, here is Sally, a native of Alaska, to tell you more.
I am Sally from Ketchikan, Alaska. In 1965, Harald attended a school of commercial art in Kassel, the city in which the brothers William and Jacob Grimm published their first book of fairy tales, including Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs and Sleeping Beauty. After seeing a movie on Alaska, we native call the Great Land, Harald left Villa Rothenburg for Anchorage in April 1967, soon to take his first flying lesson as a bush pilot with flight instructor Pat Gillespie at Merrill Field.
This is an aerial shot of Merrill Field, 1968.
Practicing emergency maneuvers, he learned this lesson. Don't concern yourself with obstacles, focus on where you want to be.
Hi, I'm Eric. Sally is my sister. I was very popular with superstars like Stevie Nicks. Now I live in Homer, Alaska. Harald Naber carved Molly and many early Naber kids in that log cabin in Homer.
February 3rd, 1969, I married Betty Jo with a 7-year-old daughter named Angela, who is still with me today.
Indeed, and shortly thereafter, together with Betty Jo, you started Fur Traders, a retail shop at 831 West 4th Avenue, downtown Anchorage.
Here Big Noonie was born.
All sorts of fur coats, hats, mittens, even Eskimo mucklucks were offered and sold.
The building has since been demolished.
Many visitors asked for native-made Eskimo or Indian dolls.
Handmade Eskimo dolls were hard to find.
So Harald tried his hands on carving his own.
Yes, James, I did. I went to a building supply store, bought me a 4x4-inch fence post, and carved, I can only say, one of the homeliest dolls I've ever seen. First Noonie doll, 1970. We called it Original Nunavik Doll.
Harald quit the doll-making business a few years later.
Yes, Sally, in 1975, we sold the Noonie Doll Company to Northern Horizons, also known as Kayana in Anchorage.
In 1976, we moved from Anchorage to Cedar Key, Florida. Betty Jo and I, we purchased the Island Hotel, and we both ran the operation there until 1979.
The Island Hotel in Cedar Key, built in the 1800s, is one of the oldest hotels in Florida.
After a few years of sun, beach and palm trees, Harald longed again for the magnificent and spectacular northern lights. In 1980 he started his second venture in Anchorage, as reported by a local television station.
Hidden on a little-traveled part of Denali Street is the Naber Doll Factory, the source of a unique line of Alaskan dolls. The factory sprang from the imagination of Harald Naber, a German who came to Alaska and became a doll maker.
Well, I came to Alaska actually not because of the dolls. I came to Alaska in 1967 on a visit, and I really love this country up here. I fell in love with Alaska, and here I'm still in Alaska.
The creation process begins with the mold being carved and poured. Then, a craftswoman stains the bodies and a specialist paints the silicon eyes. Doll makers attach reindeer and rabbit fur to silicons, and they are ready to migrate to Kachemak Bay. For News Service 2, Valerie Meehan.
2 years later Harold moved again, this time to his all-time favorite place, Homer, a small town located at the southern end of the Kenai Peninsula, surrounded by 7 glaciers and mountains. Homer is known as an artist community throughout Alaska. In this cabin behind me, Harold created the first, what is now known as, Naber Kids.
She's in Richmond with my heart, and I'm bound for Carolina. Wish I never met this train, for the girl that's left behind.
Don't eat yellow snow.